Hey there, and welcome back to the show. Today we have Paul Salcedo of BottleVin. Thanks for joining the show, Paul.
Thank you for inviting me.
I've taken a look at your website, but I think it's usually best to hear from the founders themselves. What would you say your mission of your company is, just so people can know?
Our mission is to be a mobile first platform that builds product identities with products. In our case, we are targeting the wine industry and trying to make as many smart bottles as we can.
So, what exactly is a smart bottle?
A smart bottle is one that you can engage with through any type of tech, web, mobile, whatever it is. But typically, they use a scanning technologies where the label or some type of piece of the bottle, in our instance, is used. So there's a bunch of different types of campaigns out there, you could say, that that have been used for making a smart bottle. Our very first campaign was with NFC, which is a NFC chip. It's a little microchip, a little antenna. Most people don't understand what NFC is, but if you tell them what they use it for, we use Google Pay or Apple Pay.
Hmm.
That's NFC. And so I think our first wine bottles we did with Reynolds Family Winery, and that's a second winery right shortly after that, Bricola Vineyards, is they did NFC bottles. And so we did, I think our first year, I think our number, if I, I'm trying to remember, this was back in like early 2019, but I think we did our first year somewhere in the realm of around, I think it was around 35 to 40,000 bottles that were NFC enabled, meaning you could tap the bottle and then get information behind that with a mobile app. Is how we launched our product. And so back to your original question, I diversed a little bit. So NFC is one of the other technologies. QR code, which is very apparent right now. So QR codes, you're seeing it. The pandemic has. What's been awesome about the pandemic is it's kind of waking up the wine industry for us. But retail in itself has been creating product identities for a long time. If you go to the grocery store, just take a look at a product and you'll probably see a QR code on something. I've recently seen a lot on like bread, milk. I mean,
Hmm.
it's appearing everywhere. I go into Home Depot. It's here's a QR code to scan to learn how to build a deck or something of that sort. But back to the original question, product identities is NFC and QR code are probably the two most popular ones. Actually, there is a third, which is called label recognition. And label recognition is you scan, well, just image recognition is probably the better way to put it. But label recognition in the world of where I live is you scan a label and then it'll bring back information about that bottle of wine. And so the reason I say QR and NFC are kind of more are more the standard is because Apple and Google have both natively supported NFC and QR code inside the phone. And so you don't need a special app. You don't
Hmm.
need anything special. You can just take your camera on Android or on the iPhone, point it at a QR code and it'll just say, hey, would you like us to associate the data that's associated with this QR code? Same thing with NFC. You just tap the chip and it'll pop open the same thing. So that's why I say from a product identity point of view, I think moving forward, I see QR code kind of being right now the way that people are using everything. I see NFC being the future because it's just convenience, security. There's a bunch of tech in NFC
Hmm.
that people aren't taking advantage of right now. A lot of the reasons why NFC is a little more harder to go to market with a campaign is because QR codes are free. NFC chips
Hmm.
usually cost some money, anywhere between they're coming down to lower cost, but chips, depending on what you buy, I would say on average around 25 to 30 cents a chip. So,
Hmm.
um, so back to your question, those are the kind of the three technologies we have. We've supported two more technologies. One is we're doing UPC, which are barcodes. So that's a fourth scan that we're doing. And actually, it's not really a scan, but it's a text search. So when you create a product identity or digital product identity, each of these products have a personality. So you can do what you do. What we do, our platform creates an association with the bottle of wine. It doesn't actually have to be just a bottle of wine. It can also be any type of like literature, shelf talker, even digital, like on a website. You can put QR codes anywhere. NFC, you do have to have chips, so you can do so. NFC, you can put them in like business cards. So there's a bunch of different ways to do that, but every time that creates a unique identifier. And um, the way that proper product identities should be used, in my personal opinion, and what I preach for BottleVin, is that you want a unique identifier. There are two ways to create a QR code. There's a static QR code and a dynamic QR code. And the static QR codes are, let's say I create a QR code and I create www.david.com, right? And that's what my QR code points to. The dilemma with a static QR code is that once you imprint that on something, let's say you're putting it on a product, right, like a wine label,
Hmm.
at that point in time, that QR code is always going to be www.david.com. And so at that point, I can't really, if I needed to change it, let's say you
Hmm.
went to davidiscool.com and now it's like, oh, all these bottles, let's say you lost the domain or something of that
Hmm.
sort. You can't change that. If you
Hmm.
use a unique code to your QR code, then you can change that on the fly and dynamically repurpose that QR code to now go to that new website or that new section. The other advantage with a dynamic QR code is the data you can get behind it. I know there's a lot of privacy and all this stuff, and we're very cautious about how that is. We do make, it's part of Apple and Google's initiative to actually alert people if they are doing any type of geolocation or data and all that type of stuff. So we, as a developer, we make sure we're consistent with those. But, the data, to give you some examples, is that you can learn like if there's, in our instance in the wine industry, if X amount of this winery's wines are being scanned in, say, the Los Angeles area versus the Seattle area or the San
Hmm.
Francisco Bay Area, you can now find out like, hey, there's a lot of activity going these, and you can now use that data to actually build your marketing around that.
Hmm.
And so, a dynamic QR code is the way I look at product identities. NFC natively has built-in serial numbers. They're called UIDs. And so the beauty about NFC is every single chip has its unique identity. And so you could literally, those 40 plus wine bottles that we deployed in 2018, we can actually find out if we needed to where that bottle has been scanned last or what it's, and it down to the single bottle. It's like, so BottleVin's name is kind of interesting. You would think Vin was for vino or wine, but BottleVin actually we came up with it. Our co-founder Jason Driver, he came up with the Vin piece as a Vin ID. So like if you think of
Hmm.
your car, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's how BottleVin's name actually came around. And so the beauty about NFC is it actually has a unique identifier to every single chip that's deployed out there. So long story in explanation, but digital product identities to me is like, creating a engagement with the consumer on a product that identifies them and individualizes that product. They are also called IoT devices. So
So you mentioned a couple different technologies, QR, NFC. Do you have how does BottleVin operate? Which technology do you use, and how do you, yeah, how do you make it work?
I think I have not come across a platform that does what we do, but we
Okay.
support NFC, QR code, UPC, uh,
Hmm.
so those three and label recognition. So we actually support four different scan technologies in our platform. And it's the way we support that is we auto generate QR codes through we have a web portal our wineries
Hmm.
are going into. We have and each one of those QR codes are unique IDs when they get generated. We have a quick uploader that literally will just let you upload all the serial numbers of your NFC chips and now associate up those with the BottleVin platform. Label recognition is really simple. Take a picture, upload the picture, and now it's associated with that bottle of
Hmm.
wine. And UPCs are really easy as well. Most wineries that sell wine in retail are required to have a UPC code to
Hmm.
sell in retail. So they put in their UPC code and associate with the wine that's inside the platform. So we you know we use all those technologies, back to your question, on on in our platform, and we've it's been interesting because what also has turned into BottleVin and during the pandemic is we actually realized we kind of created a framework. And so we've actually built enough. We have our API in place. We have a framework and structure in place where we can actually build any type of software. So I said we're a mobile first platform. So
Hmm.
we encourage mobile apps. We encourage, if you're not doing mobile apps, a web responsive mobile web. And then, past that, it's like there are so many other technologies. We actually have right now in beta test an Alexa app that we're doing for a winery. So voice apps are starting to come down the pipe. But
Hmm.
we're able to just generate any type of software. You being a software developer, you know that essentially we have an API feed that we can feed to any type of software. And so since we have a database full of all our partners with wineries and all the wines, we can just send that feed out and essentially build out any product. Our The cool thing about the BottleVin platform is if you don't use our BottleVin mobile app to scan a wine with a QR code or NFC, we've automated a web app site that's built that's done with our API, and essentially it will build out that page with a mobile responsive page.
Hmm.
So you now have both worlds. And that was a learning curve for us too because we started with NFC mobile app. Everyone's going to want a mobile app, and a lot of wineries like, well, what if I don't want a mobile app? Well, like, okay, well, let's figure out a solution for that. And so we automated essentially a web responsive mobile site. So everything that goes into our web portal on our back end is literally translated into a mobile responsive site or into our mobile app. So that's how we kind of use all four technologies. Again, it's not just for bottles. We've done them. We've done promotions. So we put them on postcards
Hmm.
where wineries will get a 1 cent shipping. We'll put that in there, say, scan this with the mobile app, and you'll unlock this key,
Hmm.
right? So that's, again, a physical piece of paper that they're scanning, right? You get them in Amazon all the time. Every product I get from Amazon these days typically has a postcard or something, business card with a QR code on them,
Hmm.
right? So you can do on literature in the back into the wine industry. Again, you have these things called shelf talkers, right? You should be putting them on your shelf talkers. It's I'm kind of becoming this evangelist in the wine industry because they have been they're pretty up until the pandemic. You got to look at their sales channels were grocery stores, restaurants, and on premise at the winery.
Hmm.
And so if you look at that, when the pandemic hit, all those channels just disappeared on them. So I would say at least, I don't know what the real number is, but I would say, in my opinion, 90% of the wineries right now are literally revamping their e-commerce sites.
Hmm. I guess
Because
they have to.
they have to.
Yeah.
Like, there were some sites when I was doing this, and so we did. There was a wine event that we did back in January of 2019, where I was onboarding some wineries into our platform and looking for their website, and their so part of the thing is we want to encourage sales to their website as well, and so I was looking for their shop, and I ran across a couple. One was like, if you'd like to order a wine, click here. So you click here, and it opens up a PDF form. And
Oh shoot.
like, how are they not using, stores? So the reason I say I believe it's around 90%, maybe it's 80%, but I think probably 9 out of 10 almost wineries that I've talked to in the last year
Hmm.
have literally been moving to a new e-commerce platform. And not to plug these guys or anything, but my favorite wine POS beverage is Commerce 7. They're a partner of ours, and they're one of the few POS systems I've seen out there that run headless and run APIs, and you can design around what they've built. And you working for Uber and knowing how that industry works, we the tech. So I've been in Silicon Valley since '97, and it's changed quite a bit. And if you look at modern software, the way it's being built right now, everywhere using endpoints and APIs, and that's the way they drive everything.
Hmm.
And what I found, what was a little frustrating, was a lot of the older POS platforms that a lot of the older wineries were using. They either had lockdown APIs or pieces that essentially I couldn't get access to. or I couldn't get an
Hmm.
API that was just open and there was no documentation, or I had to request that and I had to have a special team drum up whatever it was. And so, I mean, I even ran into one, I was looking at one, they're using Cold Fusion still. I'm like, dude, I haven't used Cold Fusion since the 90s or something of that sort. So, it's back to Commerce Summit, they are doing that. That's what BottleVin does on our back end. We're
Hmm.
full, if you want to get tech geeky, we're a mean stack, and we do our own, API, and we literally, that's the way we built the platform, and so it's been to our advantage because we now can essentially develop any software for the wine and spirit industry because we don't just do wine. We do a ton of wine, but we actually have a few partners that actually are distilleries that have spirits. And so, our mission, for me, is to make product identities for every bottle of wine out there and every beverage. I look at us expanding down the road to other probably products, but I just really I'm trying to get that ingrained inside the industry right now, and it's great because we've had in we have three proposals out there right now, but we've had about 5 or 6 wineries that have been talking. I have another meeting next Tuesday at
Hmm.
another winery. They're doing a few million cases of wine, and to get those type of meetings prior to the pandemic for me was kind of a struggle.
Hmm.
You had to find the innovators, the early adopters, the people that kind of said, "Yeah, I think we could do this." Right? Steve Reynolds was that, and Mark Hansen, a bricoler, Tom Glaze, the Balboa. Those are our 3 pilot wineries, and they all had that vision of like, "Yeah, Paul, we understand what you're building,"
Hmm.
but it took a little bit more time, and we have about 7 partners right now, but it's one of those things where the pandemic has changed that literally. And since January, I've probably had at least 8 to 9, meetings with people that are interested in building some type of
Hmm.
tech for their winery. So, it's awesome. Pandemic was pretty hard for BottleVin because we went through a pretty dead period. Our
Hmm.
industry died. And so I did a lot of, what my goal was during that period was to help every winery I was working with any way I could.
Hmm.
And so I started doing this stuff. I started doing, virtual interviews. I started doing virtual tastings. I started learning about, I'm not sure if you've used OBS, but it's one of the platforms that actually you can use to create, these live feeds. I started doing as much as I could to try to help our winery partners in any type of campaigns, and what we could do to just help them engage with their customers remotely, because that was what they needed and that's what they needed help with. I had a ton of e-commerce conversations because people understood that since I knew tech. So me with tech, it's kind of this. I've been fortunate because I know wine and tech and food because I grew up in Napa Valley. So my family moved there in 1976. I left there in '97 to work for that small company called Sony out here in the Silicon Valley. But you know, I grew up around wine and the wine industry, and it's a passion. I am a foodie. If you look at my my Facebook and everything, everyone gets mad because I'm always posting pictures of food, and so but I also have a passion for wine. My next door neighbor, his name was Ken Robinson, was the one who taught me about wine, and his family, his wife Vivian, and their daughter, who is incredible. She's younger than me, and she's like I think she's 20. So I turned 50 last year, so I'm no young buck anymore. But I she talk about a palate and someone that knows food. Their daughter, I mean, incredible, and that's who Vivian and Ken is who I learned it from. Ken used
Hmm.
to be at one point. He was the head winemaker for Franciscan Vineyards, but he went through multiple wineries. And I remember growing up, when I was of age, or even before I was of age, I'd go over to their house and he'd let me smell the wine.
Hmm.
So what do you smell here? What do you
Hmm.
see? What is the color of the wine? He'd take the glass and let me look at all that stuff, right? At when I got older and of age, he would take me to a winery. I remember going up on a big steel tank and lowering a cup into like the barrel to taste what that was like and stuff like that. And he's like, hey, why don't you try it? This is what it tastes like. It's fermenting right now, that type of stuff. So BottleVin came up because of my passion for wine, food, and tech. So I left Napa Valley for Silicon Valley for tech, and my first startup was 1999 with a company called Liquid Audio. But I've had such that journey to blessed in 2018 when I got one of my mentors and also an investor in BottleVin, a guy named Tok Luong. He I was talking to him and another mentor, Adam Au. They're serial entrepreneurs, angel investors, understand how it is to raise money. And another bootstrap startup I started back in 2000. I think it was 2008, 2009.
Tough
Company called
time.
Yeah, tough time. Well, it was a company called Blending Table, and we managed to get three wineries to use the platform. Think about a Shopify that did custom labels.
Hmm.
And so we did it with three wineries doing custom labels. So that background is I worked for a company called Zazzle for 8 years, and we were a print on demand custom product. Print T-shirts, right?
Is
Print.
that shirt from Zazzle?
This one wasn't, but it was. This one was a friend of mine. He started it's called Direct to Garment (DTG). And essentially, think of a big inkjet printer that prints shirts. And a
Hmm.
friend of mine has a DTG printer that actually prints these shirts, and he did them for me.
Okay.
I forgot Todd's. I should give him a plug, but I forgot the name of his company now. But anyways, I ran operations, so I manage all the software deployments. I work with the developers. I manage all the integration. Me and my team of all the hardware for Zazzle. So when I left Zazzle, I had this like, let's do custom labels, right? I actually had a little crazier idea. Blending Table actually started into I wanted to do custom wine. So essentially, blend your own wine, and that still resonates a little bit. Maybe they come around one of these now that I actually know it can be done.
Hmm.
One of my close friends, he's operations guys over at a winery called the Wine Foundry. They do a custom crush facility, so you can actually do your own wine these days, right? And so,
I didn't know that
um,
existed.
yeah, so there's a lot of they're called custom crush facilities. Like I said, look at the Wine Foundry. They have a ton of clients, and but you can go in there and work with them and essentially create your wine brand. They call them boutique wines, right? And so when you look at back to the blending table piece, we were making some decent headway, but the thing that I think was hard for blending table, and you kind of nailed this when I said it was the timing is really key to any
Right.
startup company.
Yeah.
And back then, we were looking, not everyone had a smartphone, not everyone had internet to the access to the internet. um, you don't have, I mean, if you look at all the services and libraries available right now to build out technology, all that wasn't there. So the scalability and bootstrapping and getting that done just wasn't, it wasn't the right timing. So back to, I knew when with Bottlevin, when I started this company or started looking at it, I did a lot of R&D. So
Hmm.
went back and talked to my friend at the Wine Foundry. I had a friend, he was the tasting room manager over at Sterling Vineyards. Bargetto Winery, one of my true love wineries up in Santa Cruz, Loretta. She is the president over there. Talked with her. I talked with multiple people in the wine industry, and I had created a proof of concept mobile app. Um, Essentially, it was here's an app. So the app, what it could do was it could tap an NFC chip, and it could literally open up that experience. And I went through all of this, and my initial thoughts to Bottlevin was there's going to be authenticity, and it's going to be blockchain, and everyone's going to eat this up, right? It's like this is the way you want to do it. And so as I went through all of these wineries, talked to them, none of them cared about authenticity. The U.S. wine market in itself, small to medium producers, they really aren't looking at authenticity. There's not a lot of counterfeiting going on
Hmm.
with their wines. There are though, so it's funny we're having this discussion today because uh, Jean Charles, he's for Raymond Vineyards. He's a very literally he's in the industry. They just announced today that they're doing an NFC authenticity product with their wine.
Hmm.
So they're the second winery that has done a press release in this year that I've seen. So the JCB collection are doing NFC authenticity on their high-end wines. Decoy, they just announced a Google and Alexa voice app. So I'm seeing wine text starting to pop up this year.
Hmm.
But back to that NFC piece and authenticity. So back to NFC has a serial number on it.
Hmm.
So you can now authenticate these bottles of wine. And when I was going around to these wineries, again, they said that's nice and everything, but we like the marketing aspect. We like you could tell the story. You could tell us, what vineyard this came from, what's the vintage. You could tap all that stuff. And
Yeah.
so everyone I talked to were just like, I think the smart label and engagement piece is the thing that you like. And so when I went back to Toke, I'd been massaging my pitch deck, changing it, trying to figure out all this stuff. And he's like, I want in. He was like, you've got enough information where I want to look at this. And so, we BottleVin was blessed to be able to get our early angel investment in 2019. And so, I'm sorry, 2018, middle of 2018. And so we started building, we started doing everything it does to build an app. And if people haven't done it before, software it's a long journey and it's not a cheap journey either. So it's like, between doing the UI design, wireframes, all the development, all that type of stuff. But in August of 2018, we had our first alpha build that we did with Reynolds Family Winery. We released it at his Steadfast event. It's one of his allocated wines. We put NFC chip labels on every. Oh, actually, I have one right here. So those are the chips that went
Hmm.
on every bottle of the Steadfast wine. And people at his. So we were there in front, and everyone that came in were like, "Hey, download the app and try this out. You'll find out everything about Steadfast." And that was kind of our start in our first app. And then March of 2019 is when we kind of released the BottleVin app with our three pilot partners, Bricola Vineyards, Reynolds Family Winery, and Balboa Winery. And so that's kind of where that's again I kind of I went on tangent, so I don't forgot what the original question was, but that's kind of how BottleVin kind of came around. So
So you mentioned NFC and you mentioned QR code, and I recognize that both Android and iOS have native integrations for those. But you also mentioned things like image recognition as well as the little like the retail barcodes.
yeah,
Does that require a special app for people to recognize those?
so you have to have libraries inside a mobile app. So you can't do image recognition and you can't do UPC reading unless you have a mobile app.
I see. I see.
So
Okay.
there's libraries that we've hooked into with image recognition. There's a lot of you got to get libraries that do label learning on that type of pieces. It's like with any recognition technology. There's a teaching and a learning curve to how that works. And then with UPCs, it's pretty straightforward. Those have been around forever. It's just a number. And
Hmm.
so you can scan. There's a multiple apps out there that let you use these technologies. But again, you have to have some type of software to drive
Right. Right.
the reading of those codes.
So would the label of the bottle suggest to the user so they would know to scan the code with a specific app?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
You laugh. I have a little. Let me. I got it. Oh, my wine rack back.
Sure.
Let me grab it here real quick here. Where is it? So let me get a QR code one too. so So here's two bottles of wine. This one's Bricola Vineyards. If you take a look at the back of their, actually, let me see if the other bottle had something. I wanted to show a different version. No, that one doesn't have. Yeah. So We've changed, so we've learned a lot on this journey. So this was one of our first runs that we did. So if you take
Hmm.
a look at, see this serial right here, right?
Yes.
It's what it says is download the app, and it has our URL address,
Hmm.
right? So in there, that way they can figure it out. We've actually changed this messaging to, scan for tasting notes.
Hmm.
So people are understanding that more. You can take a look at this one here. This is another early one. This is a QR code for Reynolds Family Winery.
Hmm.
It's a QR code that we put back there. But like you said, if you take a look at the Bricola vineyards, the this also has a barcode. So Bricola was they have you can enable that the NFC QR codes and barcodes. This year, most of my wine or the last year's run, probably most of them have switched kind of to QR code from the affordability point of view.
Hmm.
Um, NFC typically, unless you have a wine that's 25 or higher, you're probably not buying NFC chips. I actually see it being more of a luxury brand.
Hmm.
We're talking to a winery right now that they have an allocated wine that's $300, and the chip costs are nothing to them on that. Even with a $25 to $40 bottle of wine, uh, wineries don't see it this way, but it for me it's fact is that they look at the chip as being a cogs and a bottling cost.
Yes.
It's not really that. I mean, it's a marketing piece. It should go into your marketing budget because
Hmm.
how much do you spend on a business card? People don't realize like on a postcard, I'll spend if you do it with like a company like Moo, you're gonna spend $1 a postcard, right? These chips are less than $1 a postcard, but yet they
Hmm.
look at it as a COGS versus a marketing expense. But if someone taps that, give you an example, we recently I think we did some. There have been over 3,000 scans of the Reynolds wines, and those are 3,000 people that have scanned a bottle of Reynolds Family Winery. It's like you are that's a marketing cost, right? That's not part of the buy. So again, it's the wine industry is interesting. I'm glad and fortunate I started this when I was because
Hmm.
I've learned so much about messaging, call to action, all these things that the wine industry is a tough nut to crack. Anyone else that wants to venture into it, feel free to because it's a hard one, and you really have to have a network. And I was fortunate enough to grow up in the Napa Valley, so I have a lot of friends and family, not friends, friends that not a lot of family that are in the wine industry, but a lot of friends that are in the industry that were able to connect me to people in the industry.
Hmm.
And so it gives you a little bit more credit because you don't really find a lot of people that understand wine and tech uh, as much as I do. But the funny thing about it, so my co-founder is a restaurateur. He's had his restaurant, I think since '94 is when it started. Um, but Jason is the heart and soul. As much as I love wine and understand wine and all the aspects about it, Jason's the palate guy. He's the guy that understands. He knows the food pairings. He knows all the descriptors, all that stuff. And that's, he's my better half on that part.
Hmm.
As much as I know it, he's way better at it than me. Running a restaurant that long, and so you know, you he's one of the he's a co-founder for BottleVin, but we have two other developers. Our front end developer and our back end developer is speaking of there's one of the developers right there. That's Steve. So they are they are they're winos and well not we're just beverage guys and spirits. We like our alcohol, you could say. But they know what a cab is, they know what a pinot is, they know what they know what tannins are. They know so the team that Bottlevin has from a tech perspective, and those guys are also I met them all at Liquid Audio.
Huh.
What the back end developer, and also he's also front end. He does the front end web piece of it. His name's Steve Ansell, and then Steve Schaughauser, he's the one who does does our mobile app piece of it. We all friends from Liquid Audio days. Ansel used to be my manager, and then Steve Schaughauser is actually a close friend, and actually was in my wedding. It's like,
Hmm.
we're all this. Bottlevin is truly we understand wine and we understand spirits. And so when we go into a winery and we talk about, the platform and the
Mhm.
technology, we it's easy to be able to talk their language, right? Because the wine industry has, there's dark periods, meaning where they go dark because one is harvest. That's
Mm.
fall time frame. They're harvesting all their grapes, right? Don't expect to do much business with the wine industry during the
Mm.
harvest, right? They have bottling. Right now it's spring bottling. So everyone's doing labels, they're doing so I've, in the last 2 months, all our partners are like, hey, I need a QR code. I need this. And so, we will generate all those QR codes for them so they can put them on their, on their labels. And so, because like I said, every bottle of that BottleVin works with their wineries are unique identifiers on there, so they all have unique IDs that go onto these bottles. And so, it's one of those things for us as a company. We love food, we love wine, and we love tech. So.
So how difficult was it to convince those people to leave a cushy corporate job to join a startup?
It wasn't because we were all startup guys.
Okay.
So there's Steve left corporate. A lot of the reasons why I left corporate was we've gone through a lot of startup companies that you just kill yourself for. And in the end, either a wrong decision was made, or investors say they need this, or something happened in the market or whatever, where you either get laid off,
Hmm.
or just something happens, or your team members, you have to lay off your whole team. I mean, um, I think one of the biggest ones that I remember was with Steve, with the Steves. I call them the Steves because they're both named Steve and Sound Steve. At Liquid Audio, we call it Black Friday. It was a Black Thursday. It was Black Tuesday. I don't know what it was, but anyways, we call it Black because we laid off 40% of the company.
Hmm.
And so the Steves actually have started. They started their own consulting company, and that's how they kind of, well, Steve Van still worked for Sony for a while, so we have the Sony connection going on here. So, but Schockhauser, we worked at another startup together called Film Loop, which was an early startup, and it was that exact thing where the investors said, "Look, you guys have to sell the company," and we both, I know Steve went and started his own consulting company himself, and
Hmm.
I went on to literally I went to kind of to a couple companies, but Zazzle's where I ended up going with that side. But um, for me, it was a little different. Steve, yeah, that guy is incredible because he's run his own consulting and his own company for a long time.
Hmm.
Because he wasn't. I've been doing side hustles and bootstrapping before I can't. My wife, bless her soul, she puts up with my craziness. But I've been trying to pull off a company, and I'm getting closer and closer and closer. Blending Table was really close, and then the market just wasn't right, and then now with BottleVin, I believe this is the one, and I think that back to your question with the team, all of us are entrepreneurs. We all have that in our mindset.
Hmm.
So when we all said let's build BottleVin, I came, here's the idea, and then everyone jumped on, and we're constantly, the Steves are always with me in any time we're doing a proposal or what we're doing. Jason's always with me whenever we're coming in and talking, to wineries and stuff like that. Jason actually is remote. He's out in Idaho, so his restaurant's Asiaga's Restaurante out there if you ever want to go eat. But you know he used to come out here almost, I would say, at least once, if not twice a month from
Hmm.
from Boise, and just to have meetings and attend and do that stuff. And the pandemic, of course, has stopped that because it's just traveling is not there. But it's picking up. It's. I have a lot of hope. I had a meeting with Toke again last week, and told them just the stuff we're going on. We have a couple of other investors we're talking to right now as well. And BottleVin, is in the mode where we are looking to raise our next round. One of the things that really went bad for us was on the pandemic was we were going through due diligence with a seed investor,
Hmm.
and and it was literally the week of SIP,
Hmm.
and obviously, investment and everything went put on hold during the pandemic. And that round for us was to do sales and marketing and
I
grow
see.
BottleVin. So BottleVin put everything kind of on hold as well and focused on our wineries to see how we could help them. And then, start of this year, it's been uh, we did a soft launch, so I'm not sure I can say it. I wish I could. If it was a full launch, I would say right now who we did. We just released a custom branded app for a big wine club. Um, you know, uh, their Instagram's over 100K members, following, and we're seeing some great results with them right now. So that was our first, product that we released, and we did this about 3 weeks ago.
Hmm.
But we've been working with.
Congrats.
Was that? Oh, thank you.
Congrats.
Yeah, we've been working with them, since we started the project the start of the year. Um, but with that, and we're starting to see again, the wine industry is starting to look for tech, and so I just believe that timing was a little crazy for the bottle vins side of it, but the investors have come back, and are talking with us. We've talked with a couple of digital investors. So I'm hoping this year that we land that next round that we're trying to raise, and then we can go full swing on sales and marketing. So it's again it's a journey. So
On the topic of getting funding, how did you find that angel investor? I think a lot of people out there are looking for angel investment money, but they don't know how to go about doing that. How did you figure that out?
yeah, I guess so. It was so my biggest thing recommendation wise is if you have an idea, you're not just going to find money because of this
For
idea,
sure.
right? It's really, I mean, it's a struggle. You know, it's this is the second company that we've tried to find investors for. I worked for actually the Steves prior to BottleVin with their startup, and we were looking for investment, trying to raise capital. We they had a really good customer, company called General Motors, and so GM was what happened there was that General Motors had a reorg and the contract didn't get renewed. And so we were looking for investment at that point. And so trying to come up with ways to raise investment and run, is not an easy thing. So back to your original question is that what I did was, put your idea on paper and then start building out a pitch deck. And there's multiple things out there. Just YouTube it how to build a pitch deck, right? Do your research and develop on the industry that you're going to go into. I fortunately had wine experience. I already had, with blending table, I had already people I'd worked with in the industry that I could talk to and find out about the next project that I did, right?
Hmm.
Um, I think I mentioned it earlier. There were two people that were serial entrepreneurs and angel investors, which is Toku Long and Adam Au, that I had talked to, and I talked to them about guidance on how do I raise money. I'm a little bit different exception wise because I'm not one of those Silicon Valley guys that you've heard have like, hit the startup and made millions of monies and they're living large. That's not me. Where I'm doing the normal. I was doing the normal corporate job, working, and just paying the bills and living. Um, but the people that that have hit it, it's like it's really easy because you if they hit it, they can put that money in and they have kind of a track record, right? And so, what I've learned is that, if you have the track record, getting money is a lot easier,
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And for us, it was kind of, I had the two angel investors that I were talking to, and the way I landed, our early angel investment was through Toke. And
Hmm.
then what Toke did was he reached out to his network and was able to go there. And then after that, I started once you start getting involved with angel investment, you are literally you're a sales guy trying to find out essentially how many people that might be interested in investing
Right.
as well as no investors, right? So you as an individual, as a co-founder and as a CEO of a company, I mean your primary goal is to raise money for the company, right? Because even though you get a first round, that money is going to run out at sometime if you're doing your budget right and you're looking at your OpEx, right? And so you got to make sure you're ready for the next round, right? And so for us, it was once we got that angel, we went out through all the networks. It was just keep on building through all the network and the connections that we knew. It was, you know, if I had a friend that was working for he was working for a distillery. And prior to that, he had a nice exit. So I was like, hey, would you look at investing in BottleVin, right? And so, but what's key to that raising is that pitch deck I was telling you. If
Mm.
you Our pitch deck is probably probably 30 to 40 iterations from what it originally started, and the story gets more and more concise as your company is being built. Like, um, we just started as an NFC scanning mobile app, right? With that could deliver content real time. That hasn't changed on our story.
Hmm.
But what's developed is we now support all these technologies. We know that we are a mobile first. We now have kind of a framework where we can build out other types of software that encourages mobile or voice apps or whatever it might be, right? And so when you're raising money, you're going to get hit with those questions of like, what's your roadmap? What's your vision? Why, where do you see your customers coming from? A mobile app is a really hard business to be in, and unless you have something that will go viral, your mobile app is going to be really hard to build that customer base. The wine club I was telling you about, they have their customer base, right? And so when they send out to their customer base, everyone's downloading that app, right? There's no reason for viral, right? Um, there's a ton of wine apps out there, but we knew early on that BottleVin wasn't going to be the viral app, right? We were building an app for the industry to be able to create mobile first products. And so our approach was with our partners going to their tribes and saying, hey, have them reach out to their customers and have them download, the apps and stuff like that. So that's, again, back to the angel investment. They're going to say, well, what is your how are you going to monetize this, right? How are you going to get the customers? How are you going to do those? There's three things that I look at when in building a business, right? One is, what I've said, is timing's got to be there, right? Two, you've got to have the customers. Without the customers, it doesn't end, right? You can have the best product ever, right? I could have the best bottle of wine. It rules everyone, but if there's no customers, it doesn't matter to you, right? And so, it's timing and the right product and then the customers is kind of the three things for me. It's like the idea. I guess there's a third eye. So those are my three kind of gauges when I'm building a company, or if someone comes to me. And I've had a ton of friends that are like, "Hey, what do you think of this?" Or how do my next door neighbor? We sat down and drank wine for probably about a month ago. She had a great idea on building a business. Hey, can I talk to you? And I said, "Yeah, let's talk." And so I'm like, yeah, it's got to be the timing, it's got to be, it's got to be the idea, and you've got to have the customers, and sales and marketing is really what builds that for you. Without sales and marketing, I've turned into a sales and marketing guy. I was a tech guy. But it's like I'm no guru at it. I recently have a friend of mine that's helping me out with our digital marketing. Her name is Christy, and she's like, she's our digital marketer for BottleVin, and it's without that component, it's going to be hard to raise money. It's just there's two ways to do it, right? It's angel investment, do the research and development, but there is another way, and it's happened to a lot of people. You could run into an investor that just thinks you have the best brain, you have the best idea
Hmm.
ever, and you could accidentally fall into it, right? It's actually just three ways. So there's one, there's the do the homework. There's two, find the investor that likes your idea, and three is you go viral with whatever you just built as a bootstrap piece. So those are the three ways that you're going to raise investment. If there's some other ways, I'm not sure, but those are the three ways I've seen it, and when and we were fortunate to again to find an angel investor that was actually willing to use his network as well as invest in BottleVin.
Do you spend an active amount of your time nowadays looking to raise your next round of funding?
Yeah, I would say that I would say 70% of my time is looking for investment.
Okay.
30% of it is managing operations and doing sales and trying to get as many as I can. Between me and Jason, we're kind of the sales and marketing team right now. We're we and if anyone wants to be a commission-based sales guy for BottleVin, come look me up. So we're starting to build that right now. But we're also looking for our next raise, which is why I said, the majority of my time is trying to raise money.
Hmm.
And so for us, once we get that next round of raise, we're going to go crazy with our sales and marketing team.
Is there anything you've been learning? I imagine you've done a lot of pitches if you have 40, 30, 40 iterations of your pitch deck. What do you have learned that you wish you knew from the very beginning when it comes to pitching?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the big one for me is the elevator pitch. Um, it really is. If someone comes and asks you, what is it you're pitching me? You need to know what that is. And it took a bunch of times to kind of figure out how BottleVin, what's the need we're fulfilling? What's the pain point? And that's probably the bigger one. What's the pain point your company is trying to provide? And my pain point is, and again, the wine industry, I don't in a whole doesn't see it quite yet, but retail does.
Hmm.
Is the pain point we're resolving is we are we're resolving a way for you to engage with your product, through smartphones. I mean, I think statistics wise, Christy threw an article at me recently, and I think I think it's something like 50% of from 18 to 34 use their smartphones, as everything else. I mean, I'm sure there's a higher number, but that generation just lives on their smartphones.
Hmm.
And as we move forward and as different demographics and genres, I mean, demographics of people move to the main buyers, you're going to have to make that change. Again, I'm preaching it to the wine industry and spirit industry because retail's already doing that. Amazon's the big disruptor, right? How many brick and mortars have you seen go away because of Amazon? I mean, I don't go to a brick and mortar anymore unless I actually have to. I have everything delivered from Amazon,
Hmm.
right? And I'm fortunate too. I live in the Silicon Valley, so I usually can get everything in the next day, right? So it's not that big of a deal. But the that whole the whole I totally lost track of what I was talking about. So but it was I was on the subject of how brick and mortars kind of disappeared, right? And so back to the wine industry where you are you look at the digital identities, you look at all the wine bottles out there, look at all the spirits out there. None of them have a QR code on them. I
Hmm.
mean, not none of them. I would say 1 to 2% have a QR code on them. But I have noticed in the last, year that I'm seeing more of them with QR code.
Hmm.
But back to normal retail, that's becoming just the standard. And there are countries, Asia and Europe, that literally, they've already adopted that technology.
Hmm.
Right? And they just live by scanning and using their smartphones, right? And so I believe, back to I remember what we were talking about was back to the pitch, right? And what would I, what would
What
I,
you wish you knew. Yeah.
what I should know is like literally what is the what is that elevator pitch, right?
Hmm.
What is the pain point you're solving with your technology, and why is it that I'm going to put money into your company to fund this idea?
Right now, are you the only salesperson, or do you have a team of salespeople as well?
So I have it's myself and Jason. I do have another individual that's helping sell with us as well. Actually, I have two other people that are also doing it on a commission based deal.
Hmm.
And so we just really started focusing on sales, I would say, in the last month and a half. I did find, three or four other people that were willing to do it on their side, but doing it on the side just seemed it didn't work. Like, they had other jobs, so they're like, it's too much. They were younger guys, and I love the younger generation. I wish I could get a whole team of and pay them full time. But and when we get that next round, that's definitely the thing I'm focusing on.
Hmm.
But right now, it's me and Jason and the two other individuals that are helping me out, that are industry people. So.
I took a look at your website and it looked like your price point's on the fairly low side. I usually find that sales teams are more geared towards higher end products or services. Do you find, have you considered changing your price point?
Well, right, that pricing right now is an intro offer. We're looking
Okay,
to, we are trying to, what we're trying to do is onboard as many small to medium wineries right now, and that price point is kind of like right there with what some of their products that
I
they're
see.
doing. Um, here's the dilemma with the wine industry. Most small to medium wineries don't have a dedicated marketing department,
I see.
and most of them aren't digitally marketing. I use this in my last podcast I did with another one, another individual or company. So, if you look at, one of the big wineries in the old school wineries is Heights Cellars, and they've been around forever. One of my favorite wines, and my neighbor gave me a couple of 1970, Martha's
Hmm.
Vineyards, which is an incredible wine. And but you look at that, that company, and you look at a company, a winery that was, so they were, 1800 somethings when they started. Another winery that I've been looking at is Scribe, and I believe they were in 2007 when they started Scribe Winery.
Hmm.
If you look at if you look at the Instagram following for Heights, it's something like 3,500 followers. You look at Scribe, they're into like 30 or 40,000 followers,
Hmm.
right? It gives you kind of the sense of how digital marketing is being developed inside the wine industry. And so, it's, for me, it's, back to the price point question. There's a lot of small to medium wineries that are, it's more of like an early adopter. Like, let's get you on board. Let you see how it can work for you. Um, I will be honest with you though that the custom so the one that's not priced, because we have to scope the project, is where all our proposals are coming from. So we've, like I said, we have three proposals out there right now that literally, actually we have two because the third one actually accepted last week. But the two other proposals, they're looking for custom mobile app features and
Hmm.
pieces. So, one wants authenticity. So they're taking advantage of the NFC. The other one, they had an idea of doing kind of an on-premise and virtual tour of the winery with the mobile
Hmm.
app, right? Um, the one that we were just ready to do is he actually wants to create a sales piece to the app. So essentially, as his sales team goes out, so this guy is, he's a sales guy. He understands it, and he's, he started the winery, and he's like, um, he took a look at it and he's like, okay, I want to build a sales component to where I can take any of our documents and use the phone to share it to anyone I'm talking to, right? So we're building out a component to the BottleVin app where they will be able to share out these documents and these pieces to and unlock that for an individual. So you would give me your email address and your account in the BottleVin ecosystem, and we would unlock that feature for you that you could now use this to, you go into a grocery store. I want to sell this wine. I'm talking to the salesperson there, the buyer, and I'm like, hey, David, if you want, if you want a sales sheet, here you go. Let me get your, send me a text message or send me an email, and I can send it on him on the fly right there. So those are kind of the ones that we've been getting a lot of engagements on right now. So and not saying we're not getting agents on that. We just recently signed a winery in Australia, Whistler. So it was called Whistler Wines, and immediately I thought of Whistler, Canada. Then I looked them up, and they're out in Barossa Valley, South Australia. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is in Australia, right? And we helped them with their they just signed up, and we helped them with their QR campaign. But again, back to the price point, that's why it's where it's at. And it may go up over time. We'll see how that works. But right now we're just trying to onboard as many. We want every winery and distillery to be able to create product identities and digitally engage. So that's our focus right now with sales.
You mentioned a lot of various services you offer to these businesses to help them get off the ground, either in the form of like digital marketing or doing custom development for them. Do you charge for those services, or do you just do it as a means of like building good rapport with a variety of wineries?
All the software builds that we were talking about were all charged.
Okay.
But if you work with me, literally you get a lot of free work.
I was thinking you sound, that sound like that.
I mean, I've gone. So I do a lot of web development.
Hmm.
My big one is I'm a WordPress guy.
Okay.
As you get, most small businesses run WordPress, and I
Yes.
have multiple. Brickholder is one of them. I did, there's another there's a bunch of other companies that I've done some word. Houston Vineyards, I'm helping them out with their WordPress system. So those partners, I was kind of just throwing some free work for for
Hmm.
them. We did. It was cool because give you a cool one on Brickholder. When COVID was happening, they needed an online consent form. And so back to, this kind of all ties into. So they recently switched to Commerce 7 last year. And so what they wanted was a QR code that when their customers come up to the tasting room, they could scan the QR code and it would go to an online form where it would be the COVID consent. And so what we did was we worked with our back end system creating the QR codes and we hooked it up to the Commerce 7 system. And so every time that happened, it went to the online form that's built with Commerce 7, and then they could at that point, use the data that was being provided on all the consent forms of there, and they tagged it with a hashtag essentially. Well, a tag inside the Commerce 7 system where they could literally, filter like, oh, how many customers have actually done COVID consent. So you're now getting data behind that. You're understanding how many people are actually doing COVID consent. And if they ever had to get audited, they could say, look, this is our list of all the people that we've signed up for COVID consent. So we are abiding by the California regulations.
Hmm.
So that whole project right there, I did for free. so,
Dang. How long did that take you?
it took me about 3 days.
Okay.
It
Full
wasn't.
days.
Yeah, we got to
Okay.
remember you have built-in platforms. So Commerce 7 has their platform, BottleVin has their platform,
Right,
right?
right, right.
And then it was just looking at it was essentially hooking into the APIs and the form pieces. And
Hmm.
so, again, that's what's amazing about technology right now. If you have these platforms and these libraries and all these, tools, so you can build something pretty fast. My proof of concept, I did it all myself. I don't know how to build a mobile app. The Steves do, but they had created. The startup we did was a company called PTUX, where we did a mobile app design. It was essentially a designing a prototyping tool, and part of it was you could take the prototype design and build it into a mobile app, and we had
Mhm.
created a whole platform behind that. And so I literally prototyped everything and just spit out the mobile app, and that's how I went to sell the BottleVin app. So
Hmm.
so there you go.
So, how long would you recommend founders spend on their MVP, assuming they're trying to do something in the space of mobile apps or web apps?
What do you mean in terms of lengthwise on
Like,
MVP?
like I think some people want to spend a year to 3 years to build their MVP. Some people think an MVP needs to be built in 3 days. Like, where do you fall in that spectrum?
I would say at least, I would say a minimum, depending how complex the idea is, I would say, 3 to 6 months probably. We came out with, so if you look at, we started building in July of 2018 and our MVP
Mhm.
came out mid March of
Okay.
2019. Um, and our product is pretty complex. I mean, we have a whole back end web
Right, right.
portal. We have, we're building iOS and Android. We're doing all these scan technologies. There's a bunch of things. The other thing I haven't really mentioned is we work with a company, with our labeling company that had to do all the embedding of the labels in the NFC chips. So we had to work
Hmm.
that out. So I don't think putting out an MVP in 3 days. I think that's the viral thing, and you're gonna get some influencer. Maybe I don't know if you do follow YouTube or much, but there's a guy my son watch. My son's 11 years old. He watches this guy called Mr. Beast.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, I'm familiar with Mr. Beast.
so Mr. Beast is crazy.
Yes.
He's got 50 million followers, right?
Yes.
you if Mr. Beast built a mobile app in 3 days and told his followers to go see it, yeah, you'd get some traction on that MVP. But I typically think it's going to be about a 3 to 6 month churn. And one of the things I will say is, when we built our MVP, we got to the end. Like, here was our MVP, and when we looked at the end of that range when we wanted to release, it was probably 70% of what we thought the MVP was going to be.
Hmm.
And so you really got to look at, when you build out the MVP and what you are, you're probably going to cross that road of where, what features are necessities and what are not features,
Right.
and then what do you push out past the MVP, right? So again, I think 1 to 3 years. I mean, you better be building something brilliant at that time to release an MVP. I think, like I said, 3 to 6 months is probably what I would think would be a good one.
Okay. Last question. How can our viewers get in touch with you? That's something they want to do.
So I have a LinkedIn profile. Feel free to go on there. It's LinkedIn, and I think that whatever the profile is /Paul Salcedo. BottleVin.com. We have a contact page there. You can submit a contact form and get there, and all our information is on there. So those are the two best ways to get a hold of me.